Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear me. My name is Rich Sheffrin. I do these live streams every Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesdays from 2 to 4 p.m., Thursdays from 6 to 8 p.m. Both times are Eastern. And just checking a note that I got here from StreamYard. Cool. Let me know if you can hear me. And what we're going to be talking today about is productivity. It's been a whirlwind for me. I just got back from two back-to-back trips, then a full team meeting at my house here in Delray that I had to leave early for because I actually went to Syracuse University to go visit two of my kids and brought my third along. And so can hear you. Good. And so with that, just finally got back last night. We are supposed to get back yesterday morning, but some problems with a plane. And so finally back in the swing of things, had some calls this morning and excited to be here with you. So I am looking forward to talking to everyone here. And so please, let's make this as much of a dialogue and less of a monologue as possible. The algorithm gods of YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and even Periscope, believe it or not, they look at how much interaction is going on and then determine how much should be shared amongst other users on their platform based on the fact of whether there's interaction or not. So therefore, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the thumbs up, please subscribe, and most importantly, comment. And if you feel inclined, share. And if you share, put hashtag shared in the chat. So this way I can thank you personally. If you're watching on Facebook, same, emote, comment, join our Facebook group, Strategic Profits. It's completely free. If you're watching on LinkedIn, make sure to connect or follow us. And of course, emote and comment and all that kind of stuff. So Tina can hear you. Awesome. I'm trying to see how much I can actually, right now I got my new screen for my teleprompter. So I'm trying to have it all on this teleprompter in front of me. And so that this way there's less of a reason for me to look down because I've replicated the screen of my Mac Mini, which is what I use for streaming. So let's see here. Hey, Rich, good seeing you. Well, good seeing you too, my friend. And don't forget to talk about ADD. I won't. We certainly can talk about ADD. I am good. I hope you are as well. And today, you see, this is going to be hard for me to read. So let me just pull it over here for a second. Today, I have some questions about chain of beliefs. I'm sure that you can clarify the concept. Of course I can, since I'm the guy that invented chain of beliefs. And Jason is tuning in from Tampa. So if you haven't commented already, or even if you have, let me know where you're watching from. It's always nice to know who I'm talking to, as well as where you're at. I'm here in Delray Beach, and that's where I'm talking to you from. I wish I could get these to be better, and I'm just trying to see, how do I do that? What's the best way to kind of make sure that I can actually see this? I think that's better. Cool. All right. So with that, productivity is kind of like a very general, right, label for a lot of stuff. And I would say that this applies whether you have ADD or not. But, a lot of people think of me as someone who's highly disciplined, highly productive. And that's not really true. I find that when I'm very passionate about something, I can be highly productive and I can also be highly focused. When I'm not, it's very much not like that. So for me, the greatest productivity secret in the world is to work on things that I'm passionate about and to figure out ways that I can get other people to work on the things that I'm less passionate about. And I don't know of anything that is more important, at least for me, than that. It's very easy for me to get a lot done, to be highly focused when I feel like what I'm working on is significant and is something that I am passionate about. But when it's not, like, I'm not. And so I can share a lot of strategies that make me better, right? And I believe would make you better. But I'd also say that if, I've talked about this on numerous live streams before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. And by all means, if you're just joining us, please let us know that you are and where you're watching from. But, I went through a midlife crisis when I was 40. I'm now 50. And part of the midlife crisis that I had was that I am I had achieved all the goals that I wanted to by the time I was 40, way before I was 40. And I never thought I'd be as successful as I've gotten. I knew I thought I thought deep in my mind that I would be successful, but I just didn't know what that necessarily meant. And achieved a lot more success than I ever thought I would. And so by the time I was 40, I was like evaluating my life, and I was kind of looking at that more often than not, I wasn't happy. And I had like convinced myself that when and if I had achieved certain things, I would be happy. And I achieved those things, and yet I was not happy. And that was really the beginning of my midlife crisis, that like now I was not sure what would really kind of bring me happiness. I had convinced myself that achieving certain things would have, and when it hadn't, I was kind of perplexed. And so for a period of time, like I really looked at how I could do things differently, because, here I had been looking at my life, kind of thinking about, for the last 20 or some odd years, I had been pursuing these goals, and with the thought that like when I achieved them, I would be happy, and I had achieved them, and yet I wasn't. And so that really had me question whether goals was really even useful or necessary. And so for a period of time, I had no goals, and that really didn't work very well at all. I don't suggest that to anyone. But when I then realized that that didn't work, and really kind of was looking through my journal at the times that I felt most alive, right? The times that I felt like where it was easy to be passionate, where it was easy to be focused, where it was easy to be disciplined. I found that those times all had certain patterns or commonalities, you could say. And the most obvious to me was that what those things had in common for me was that I was in pursuit of something. And that when I felt like I was really pursuing something of importance for myself, that life kind of just clicked in order. And that, pursuit, right, which is kind of the basis of dopamine, the, pursuing some positive outcome, right? That really it was more the pursuit that really got me excited more than anything else. And so nowadays, when I look at my goals, I evaluate my goals based on whether or not they get me excited enough to move forward. Because if they're not, if they're not exciting enough to move or alter or incentivize or motivate my current behavior, like how I feel right now, then they're kind of useless, because based on my experience. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone follow this kind of line of thinking, but I want you to understand it at the very least. If the achievement of the goal is not going to be the panacea, or the mana, or like walking into heaven, then, and that actually the achievement of the goal might make me happy for a week or two and then just right back to baseline, then it's not really the achieving of the goal that is most important as far as my productivity, my passion, my feeling of like got this stuff on point or nailed. What really matters is whether the goal currently motivates my behavior, makes me feel like doing stuff and being in action. And so for me, it all has to start with that. It has to start with, is this outcome something I'm really passionate about making happen in the world? And if it isn't, then maybe it's not the right time for me to actually focus on that. And so when I kind of put it through that lens, right, it's picking the right projects is really kind of incredibly important. At least it is for me, right? Now, I'm not saying that this is for everyone, and I've got a bunch of strategies to talk about. But before even going into those strategies, right, like you don't necessarily want productivity, at least in the long term, to be an exercise of will. Now, in the beginning, like getting into any routine might take some will, right? But ideally, you you don't want to have to rely on willpower. It's less than ideal. And so I'm just, as we're talking, I'm going to kind of chime into the comments here so that I can make sure to stay abreast of what's up with you guys. And then we will kind of take it further, right? So Jason is tuning in from Tampa. Looking forward to the tips. Looking forward to sharing them, John. And John is in Maine. Good to see you. And hey, Nairobi, Kenya. Well, nice to see you again, Stephen. And we got Mark in the UK. Good to see you, Mark. And yes, we know. And let's see, Jason, been listening to Dr. Huberman podcast based upon your suggestion. And you said you haven't been this fit ever in your life. So I thought it might be time for you to share some of your recent health optimization learnings. Yeah, I think I'll do that, but not in this Q&A. I think I'm doing a Ask Me Anything on Thursday. So that would be a great time to talk about that. Certainly feel fantastic and definitely think that some of the supplements I'm taking have made me kind of impenetrable to any kind of sickness, but we can go into that on Thursday. Hey, Gogo, good to see you, my friend. And Glenn, my neighbor, good to see you. And thank you for sharing, Glenn. You're my hero. Jason, hey, Rich, your buddy from Austin, Texas. I appreciate the transparency and vulnerability of the conversation. Well, my pleasure, Jason. I don't pretend to have everything figured out. All I can do is share with you guys what I've seen work for myself, as well as the tens of thousands of entrepreneurs I've coached and what's worked best for them. Hi, Rich. Hey, Duran from Switzerland. Good to see you. Hey, Rich, I'm struggling with poor financial habits. I love working on my passion. However, my success is severely stunted because I neglect and procrastinate on financially disciplining myself. I hate balancing books. I just want the people to do the people stuff. I could help more if we were financially more disciplined. I'm working with Wes and making huge progress. What are your thoughts about how I kick myself in the butt or learn what my financial blocks are? All right. So I would say that, like, first off, right, like that these might, and I'm just kind of thinking this out loud with you. And who was it? It was Tina. Okay. So Tina, what I would say is that there are certain things, right, that each and every one of us, although those things will be different for each and every one of us, that we're just less inclined to do. And when that happens, you have to really kind of get real, get honest with yourself as to why. So I feel your pain because I'm in the same boat right now, actually, Tina, with my finances. And in fact, I got to clean up a big mess that I let kind of linger, you could say, by not taking care of certain things. But I also know that left to my own devices, it's not something I really want to do. So I have to change the way that I go about it. Right. So in this particular case, like, we have someone on the team, her name is Lydia. And I spoke to Matt and I said, like, if I really would like for Lydia to come down here, spend a couple days with me, and we can get all this finance stuff kind of handled. I know that with someone here, that the likelihood of me getting it done and staying on task, that's an ADD thing as well, is just much higher. So, the first thing is like looking at how you currently are staying abreast of your finances, and could you do it in a different way? Could you bring someone else in? Could you get a coach that you discuss it with once a week? So there's some accountability to kind of move it forward. Maybe it's an accountant or a bookkeeper. But more often than not, there's that George Bernard Shaw quote, like, the reasonable man adjusts himself to the world, the unreasonable man adjusts the world to himself. So all progress relies on unreasonable men. And you could, women fall into that as well. But so, one of the things that's probably different for you and I, Tina, is that I've gotten to a point in my life where I'm tired of beating myself up, that I'm tired of complaining about who I am or what I am or what I naturally gravitate to and what I don't. Like, I'm just tired of it. I did it for a long time in my journal. And so I'm not willing to kind of take on the self blame or the self criticism. There's this kind of metaphorical thing in some of the Jewish wisdom literature. I don't think it's really from the Bible, it might be from the Talmud. But there's this metaphor of a problem tree, right? Where like each leaf is another human being and all their problems. And the question is like, would you be willing to go to that tree and put your leaf back and choose another one at random? And if you are, okay, then that really speaks to something. If you aren't, then that also speaks to something. I'm not. I am not willing to take the problems I have, go to some random tree and pull someone else's problems randomly. I think I'll get a bad deal, and that I'd actually prefer to have the problems I have. So if that's the case, right, that, like you're not willing to trade your problems with someone else picked at random, then you also have to kind of like look at your way of doing things, and is your way of doing things like ideal for who you are? So what I'm saying, I guess, and it's another way of saying it is that I've become much more inclined to kind of have some self-compassion and self-acceptance, and to recognize that, based on who I am, based on the challenges that I have, like ADD, that allows me to do certain things better than others. It also hinders me to do some things as well as others. And it's not my goal to beat myself up or to try and be 100 times better than who I am now. It's more about recognizing this is who I am. And is there a way based on who I am that I can make this easier for myself? And so in my particular case, like it's about having this employee, this team member come down and work on it with me, because I know that's what will make it work. And I'm not willing anymore to attempt to do it in a way that I know is going to be a struggle, that I'm really going to like beat myself up about and be upset about for no reason. So that is, now that's not an a clever way to bypass accountability or to not get something done. But instead of the inclination being that like I need to do better, I guess my inclination is I need to do it differently. And I think that anytime that you're doing something or not doing something that needs to get done, it's a much healthier response to say, I need to do this differently than I need to be better. And doing it differently is then like looking at who you are and what skills, what talents, what do you bring to the table and what don't you? So that's what I would say, right? And I hope that helps, because I know for me, it's a big difference. The understanding that I'm great at some things, I suck at other things, and I'm okay with that. And I'm never going to be great at everything. So, and I don't want to really make it a point where like I focus a lot of energy on something that's just not my thing. Instead, rather do it differently, enlist others to get help, and then get it done, move on. So hopefully that helps, Tina. Do you use music to change your mood or energy? Yes, I do all the time. So Daryl, I like to listen to techno music with no lyrics, right? When I'm writing, when I'm working on a presentation or something like that. I have different Spotify playlists. So I use like Brain FM sometimes when I'm writing, right? If I'm writing something where I need to think. But if I'm working on something and I want to be like upbeat, I'll play techno and I'll blast it here in my office. If I am jumping rope, for example, which I do kind of every day, when I'm jumping rope, I have a playlist called Baller on my Spotify account. And those are all like high paced kind of audio that does have lyrics, but makes me kind of just feel like a baller, I guess. And so those kind of amp me up to attack my workout harder. Of course, Andrew Huberman would say that I need to be careful with that because that's raising my baseline level of dopamine, which is problematic, that I might not get the spike from the workout as much, but I'm okay with that. So that I do use music quite a bit. I would say that along those lines, because it goes hand in hand, I think, is that also how I am sitting or not. Like right now, I'm standing. And so I have a standing desk here that goes up and down, obviously, like most do. But I find that I want to there are times when I want to like attack the keyboard or attack the presentation. And I find that it's easier for me to do that when I'm listening to the right music, when I'm standing versus sitting, etc. So those things make a difference. Now, I will also tell you that, and this is kind of a tangent here, but it's very much related to productivity. And I think that this would be helpful to many of you who might be working for yourself or have your own business. And this comes from the thousands of people I've coached, the thousands of entrepreneurs I've coached. I've noticed that people who spend too much time working have their efficiency go way, way down. So in fact, over the years of coaching, and I wrote about this, I think in the Entrepreneurial Emergency, I'm pretty sure it was in the Entrepreneurial Emergency, where people who spend too much time in the office often kind of become greatly inefficient because they use their excuse that they'll be working later to get done the work that needs to get done. And my experience has been that a lot of entrepreneurs, and since that's my bread and butter of coaching, that's really my reference point. A lot of entrepreneurs don't really know what it's like to be 80% effective. In other words, that if you were in the office for 10 hours, that you really got like 8 solid hours of work done. In fact, most people are not even 20% effective. So if you wanted to be 80% effective, and you don't really have that like way of thinking, way of deciding kind of built into who you are today because you've never been like that, which is most people, then the only way that I know of to radically change how you approach things, which is what has to happen, is to actually cut your work hours way, way down. So let's say that you're 20% effective and you spend 10 hours a day in the office. So you're spending 50 hours a week, Monday to Friday at quote unquote at work, right? But if you're being honest with yourself, you really only get like 2 really highly productive hours done each day, right? Well, 2 out of 10 is 20%. So you're 20% effective. What we want to do is let's say your goal was to be 80% effective, or let's say let's say 70% effective or something like that. If we cut your hours down to 3 hours a day, as opposed to 10 hours a day, what generally happens is that, and you really stick to it, like you're not going to do any work after those 3 hours. So you got 3 hours a day to get your work done. Right now, you're only doing 2 hours of solid work. So you're not really kind of sacrificing that much. Now, what happens is that the first day that you go to 3 hours, you're not going to get 2 hours of work done. That's probably not going to happen. In fact, you might not get any work done. But by the second and third day, the pressure to get work done is going to start to build on itself. And what's going to happen is that at some point that first week, you're going to start making different decisions. The phone is going to ring and you're not going to answer it because you know that that's going to cut into the 3 hours that you have. A person or a employee might come to you and say, do you have a minute? And you might answer, no, I don't, because I got to get this work done. And this is the beginning of you building that muscle of what someone who is 80% effective, actually, the decisions that they make. So, if you wanted to lose weight and you went to Weight Watchers, they would put you on a diet, and then over time, they would add food back to the diet. That's what's called maintenance. And the goal is to figure out like what is the amount that you can eat on a daily basis without gaining weight and without losing weight, right? So that's done after you've lost the weight to kind of like now figure out what this new baseline is for you. And it's kind of the same thing like as maintenance and Weight Watchers is what you're doing with maintenance with time. You're only adding hours back as long as you can maintain that level of effectiveness and efficiency, right? Now, why would you want to do that? Well, because a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that like of confusing time at work or time in front of work material as one, productive, which it isn't if you're not really working. And two, it's vapid. It's not serving you. it's taking you away from your family. It's taking you away from the projects that you could be focused on. And it's really like there is no such thing as free time, right? There's time that is unallocated. And that time, if it's unallocated, like if you're going to waste 3 hours, the question is then waste those 3 hours in a way that really like contributes to your happiness, to your experiences, to something other than just wasting time at the office. That doesn't make any sense to me. There's a time for work, and that time for work should be as focused as possible so that you can then have the rest of your time to really enjoy it, right? So that, I know it's a long tangent on that, but like recognizing that most of us are probably spending too much time like in front of the computer, like kind of working, right, when we're really not, and recognizing that if we force ourselves to be efficient without really understanding what the decisions that we'd make in when there's real pressure, it's kind of hard. So the easiest way is to, and who doesn't like, this should be desirable for most of you, like cut your hours way back. And then after a few days, you will get into a totally like different mode of working, and you will notice for yourself how different that difference is. So I did answer that. Hello, all. Hey, Davey Paul. Good to see you, my friend. Davey is in Boston. Good to see that. Nicola. Hello, Rich from Italy. Well, hello to you. Nice to see you. Brian in PSL FL, wherever that is. Why you didn't use a blog and some inbound marketing strategy in your business? Why don't you use a blog and some inbound marketing strategy for your business? Is it a choice or lack of resources or time? Well, I did used to blog a lot. What I really think though is that one of the things that these live streams haven't yet become what I want them to be, and we actually had a conversation about this with my team this morning. My preference is, instead of writing for a blog, is to do more live streams. Now, I want these live streams to be then edited and create content from them. But I do think that we're moving more and more into a video-based culture. I don't think that's any shock, right? I think that video is the highest form of content from a standpoint that every other form of content can be derived from video, whether it's audio, written, or whatever, where it's more difficult to go the other way. It's not impossible these days with AI tools, but nonetheless, it's still easiest to go from video and create anything else. So my preference, instead of being, if you gave me a choice, would you like to be an amazing writer or would you love to be amazing on screen? I would choose on screen. And I'm not suggesting that that's the right answer for everybody. But I know that if I was much better at video, I could do a lot more for the business and I could do it a lot easier. And so that's the primary reason. It's a leverage thing. It's also, this is much easier for me. And back to the original part where we were talking about, the greatest productivity secrets in the world are, one, be passionate about what it is you're working on, and then two, be in your area of genius. I want video to be an area of genius for me. I've already proven that I can write, and I can write well, based on the reports, the blogs, everything that I've written over the years. This is something that is, one, easier for me to do, interacting with you right now, and also, though, something that I really do want to improve upon. And I've also been around enough people like Gary Vaynerchuk when he first started to see the progression that he had over the 3 years or plus that he was doing Wine Library TV. He was pretty bad in the beginning, and just doing a daily TV show every day made his skill level so much higher, to the point where now he's amazing on camera. And like I said, if you gave me the choice, being amazing on camera or being an amazing writer, I would choose camera based on where the world is today. Right. So that's why. So at some point we might like have more of a blog presence. It's just not a top priority for us. Really? Wow. Cool. Okay. Hello, everyone from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Well, hello to you, sir. Or yeah, I can't. It's hard to read your names. I'm going to have to figure out how to a better setting for this. Jim Brown in San Diego. Outlived my retirement funds and back at real estate, but a little out of the flow. Any suggestions for an old fart who will be 80 is it, did you 88? Wow, you look great. Is that right? 88 next month. Wow. Well, James, the first question would be like, how did you make your original money? And is there anything that stands out for you from that you would like to keep doing or that you feel based on that gives you some competitive advantage? I remember, most businesses go out of business, right? I don't think that anyone is like, really, like what? But the entrepreneurs that make it are the ones that learn from each experience and apply that going forward. So entrepreneurs who jump from thing to totally unrelated thing tend to have the same failure rate with each new business. But entrepreneurs who learn in each business and then kind of move one step away into some other business, they're able to leverage the learning from the previous business into the next business. Their rate of success, their percentage rate, goes up with each new business that they do, whereas someone who doesn't stays the same. So you want to leverage everything that you've learned in the past, because you've been around 88 years. You've been around longer than most of us. Hopefully you picked up some things. And if you're able to apply what you picked up, that gives you an advantage over people like me who haven't had the same experience and therefore haven't learned the same things. And therefore you have an advantage. And that's what you want to look for, James. So, all right. So Jason wants to know, so how does this apply to the larger, bigger goal? How do you handle the smaller missions, milestones, or some of the tasks that you aren't passionate about? Does the bigger why get you through an unmotivating task? It certainly can, but it's also about breaking that goal up, if you can, into ways that it would be motivating. So, for example, I'll give you an example of a client of mine a long time ago who had the goal of they were doing like $1 million a year. They wanted to do $2 million a year, small business from a standpoint that it was a coach, he did some of the selling on the phone. He had like 1 or 2 people who worked for him who also sold on the phone. And, he wasn't that motivated to go from $1 million to $2 million. Right. But when we changed the goal to say, this was just a thought, like when we were doing the coaching call, I was like, well, what if your goal each day was to bring in 10 grand? And as soon as you brought in 10 grand, your day was done. So you made it a game. Like the goal was to bring in 10 grand of business each day. And when that happens, your day is over. So now you've turned it into a game. You're rushing to try and get it done, because the sooner you get it done, the more free time you have on your hands. Now, I'm not suggesting that's the right approach for everyone, but that's certainly one approach. Now, the other thing, and I had a conversation with Shay Rowbottom like this past week about this, but this is something I've also shared on live stream, so I think it's worthwhile. Then I want to get to some of the more like kind of tactical stuff as it relates to productivity. But there's a tremendous source of power for many entrepreneurs if you're able to see the connection between what you were deprived of when you were younger and seeing the connection between that and what you do today. So while I haven't gone into my whole childhood, nor do I ever plan on kind of doing a full expose of my childhood, it was kind of a unique childhood. The fact that I got to hang out with the people that were in the movie Goodfellas, or that The Wolf of Wall Street had his start at my high school, my after school job. But when I was younger, there were a lot of challenges, and I was locked in a closet for a couple of weeks. There was a lot of stuff. And I struggled, when I went through all of the Werner Erhard material that I've gone through, which is a lot because I'm a huge fan of Werner's, it kept going back to that. In order to get to greatness, you have to be committed to a cause that is bigger than yourself. Because if your only commitment is to your own happiness, let's say, then when it won't pull you into something better, right? Like you, if the example I like to give, which might be a stupid one, is like, I'm sure there were days that Martin Luther King woke up with a headache, but he didn't let that headache stop him because he wasn't doing what he was doing for himself. He was committed to a cause that was much bigger than himself. And so that headache could not stand in the way of that commitment. So I've always like kind of identified with that or understood it, but it's not my thought. It was Werner Erhard's thought. And I really kind of buy into that. But then finding something that I was committed to, that I was committed to even more than I was committed to my own happiness, was not easy for me to find. Where I found it, and where I've helped a bunch of entrepreneurs find it when I was coaching, was really looking at their childhood and seeing if we could attach what they currently do to something they were deprived of when they were younger. So you might think that, like, on the surface, right? Like, what the hell does having, like, being locked in a closet, like, kind of not being a closet might be a stretch. It was a room. Okay. But being locked in the room, really kind of being overlooked, not really having that, not feeling appreciated, all these kinds of things, right? As a child, how does that even remotely relate to entrepreneurship? Well, one of the things that obviously, well, not obviously, but I didn't, in those situations from my childhood, I definitely did not have the freedom to express myself, to self-express. And I think that the ability to self-express oneself is incredibly important, to know that you matter and that your opinions matter and that there is like, and that you have something to contribute to the world. And that was something severely missing from my childhood. So I think personally, and I didn't like, there wasn't mental gymnastics to get there, but I think personally that the most certain way that you can have the ability to self express, to be who you really are, to share what you really believe, is to be an entrepreneur. I think being an entrepreneur is the most likely way to be able to express yourself and to have that freedom. So, one way that I look at what it is I do is that I'm committed to giving people what I was deprived of when I was younger. And that commitment is huge because the what I was deprived of really is emotional, and like, if I were to resonate on it for a while or think about it for a while, I'd get upset. And so recognizing that that was something I did not have, that I get to spend my day to day now making sure that other people have that, what I was deprived of as a child that I now have, right? I have the freedom to say whatever it is I want. And my life is, not going to change dramatically. Even if I said something horrible and everyone decided not to do business with me anymore, my life is still pretty good and it will be. That understanding and that commitment that I'm committed now to that also allows me to attack smaller goals, which may not be enjoyable in the moment, but that commitment to that bigger cause, right? To give everyone a voice and to make entrepreneurship easier to do and more likely to succeed is a way that I am trying to give people something that I was deprived of that I now have, that I think is immensely important to psychological health. I don't know if that is kind of like more than what we bargained for as we're talking about productivity, but for me, that's real because like it's more core to who I am and more core to getting stuff done than some little tactic that I'm sprinkling on top of what it is I do. So hopefully that helps. I know it does for me. I know that also, looking at things in a way that is, looking at things in a way where it's more likely to be, I don't want to say self-reinforcing, but kind of self-reinforcing, more inclined to action, I guess, is critical. Now, another thing though, that's something I learned, actually something I did as it related to working out for years, but didn't really recognize how much it was applicable to other things, was that I realized that there's almost like, so we're going to use working out as an example for a second here. There are certainly times where I'm very motivated to work out. That could be because I'm feeling fat, I ate a lot, something like that. It could also be, though, that I'm feeling really stressed. And to me, sometimes working out is an escape from having to deal with something else. Now, I've combined reading and at least the elliptical. So anytime I have something to read, I will generally get on the elliptical. And so that also is another way for me to get around it. But I've had this rule that I've operated by for a very long time, which is that it does not matter whether or not I feel like working out, because there are many times when I don't feel like working out. But I've also recognized that many times when I don't feel like working out, once I start working out, I do feel like continuing, and I do feel happy that I did work out. So I have a rule for myself that I will work out for 5 minutes and then I will decide whether I want to continue or not. Now, that's at home on the elliptical or jumping rope or things like that. Obviously, if I'm going to a class like at F45, I just got to go and do it. And I've made a commitment at certain times to do that. So that's fine. But that's worked extremely well for me. And then in a Steel Our Winners interview that I had with Katrina Ruth, she was applying the same thing to writing. And I recognized that, if you follow like Newton's laws, right, of inertia, and things in motion tend to stay in motion, things that don't tend to not, right, that I'm almost never in the mood to do something other than what I'm currently doing, unless I don't like what I'm currently doing. And so I can't really decide whether I feel like doing X or feel like doing Y when I'm doing A, because like more often than not, if A is more pleasant than X or Y, I'm not going to feel like doing X or Y. So the rule is that like I can't really decide whether I feel like doing something or not unless I'm doing it. And so I can't say I don't feel like writing until I'm actually writing. I can't say I don't feel like working out till I'm actually working out. And then I can say whether I don't feel like doing it or not. So that is also just another kind of like mental hack that like I cannot say I don't feel like doing something unless I'm actually doing it. And that's worked well for me too. It's worked great for me working out. It's more new as it relates to other things, but I find that it does apply. All right. So let's see. Hi, Rich. Do you still recommend Colby as a profiling tool? Yes, I definitely do. If you're willing to take the time to really understand what your Colby index is, right? Like to understand the dynamic of that. So, for me, and my thing is over here somewhere. There it is. Hold on. This is mine. I don't know if you can read it or not, but it's a 6374. All right. So I'm a 6 fact finder, 3 follow through, 7 quick start, 4 implementer. The two numbers, I don't really understand implementer as much as I probably should, considering I got certified as a consultant for Colby. But the numbers that matter to me most are the quick start, the fact finder, and the follow through. And the cool thing about Colby is that, like, for example, I'm a 3 in follow through, which means that I resist follow through, right? 1, 2, or 3 means you resist it. 4, 5, and 6 is you're kind of neutral to it. 8, 9, and 10, I don't like, is where that's like core, right? 7, 8, 9, 10. So the thing with follow through though is that 3, right? My follow through means that I am someone who will resist follow through, but there's a positive aspect of that too, which is that I'm highly adaptable. So someone who's extremely high on follow through is not highly adaptable because they want to follow the plan to completion. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then there's someone like me who, even when the plan is a perfect plan, doesn't want to follow the plan and is looking for ways to make the plan better, different, whatever. So I'm not the best person to finish a project. In fact, I'm better off handing that off to someone else, or to at least have someone else work with me for the last mile. But I'm high on quick start, which means I'm quick to get started. I'm high on info, which means that I use a lot of info, and it's a default to kind of use info to solve problems. And I'm highly adaptable. So that's like my core. And the more things that I can be put in where I'm get to use my adaptability, I get to use my desire to start things sooner rather than later, and find information that's relevant to the issue I'm solving. The more things that I can be put in where I'm using those three core like things about myself, the more likely I am to be at peace and at harmony and feel good and happy and optimistic, like in the attack of my day to day. And the more things that are slow to start, that require high follow through and require very little information, or in areas where I don't even have experience, I'm going to feel more stressed, and I'm going to try and so those are the things, and I'm not going to be at my best. And so those are the things that I try to not put myself in. So yes, I'm a fan of Colby. I think it's a very accurate like index and can give you a lot of information. I also am a big fan of the Enneagram. I think the Enneagram is a really powerful like kind of profiling tool. But I think they all have points of value. So even though those are my two favorite, Colby and Enneagram, certainly DISC is a great model. I'm just not as like, and I've used it. I've taken every profiling tool. And the reason I have is that I think the more I know about myself, the better my performance can be and the easier my life can be. And so I'm constantly, or not constantly, but I'm always game to learn more about myself. And I hope that you guys are too. I may have ADD. Never really thought of that. Super helpful feedback. Thank you. Yeah, well, look, ADD at the end of the day is a set of behaviors that we put a label around. Well, the medical community puts a label around. And everyone in this day and age has a certain amount of attention deficit because there's just too many things calling for our attention. But there are ADD strategies like working with a timer or Pomodoro, right? I find that to be very effective for myself. To turn getting something done into more of a challenge over a period of time, right? I'm going to work on this for 30 minutes and I'm going to try and maximize the amount I have done. I also find that I am most productive if I start my day like with a mind map, kind of thinking about all the things I want to get done, how they're related to other things, and kind of organizing my day in kind of a creative way as opposed to just a to-do list. I try to, and I don't always like succeed at this, but I'm cognizant of it. I try to schedule fun things on my calendar so I have stuff to look forward to, because a lot of times what I used to use as a rationale to procrastinate was like, well, once I start this, that's going to take up all this time. I'm not going to be able to do this, that, or the other thing. And so it would be this way of kind of avoiding doing work because like once I start, I'm going to be doing too much work, which is like BS, but something that I would convince myself of. It's kind of like, I don't want to work out because I'm afraid I'm going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, don't worry about it. And you're not going to be just doing this work forever. But I find that having certain things on my calendar that I'm looking forward to doing are therefore kind of help me get stuff done, make sure I got stuff done, because that evening stuff is now, I don't have the ability to say, well, I can just do it later, right? I try to remove that excuse as much as possible. So I either do it now or it doesn't get done. So timer, mind maps, commitments to people whose opinion I actually really care about. Those are things that are important to me. It's also about knowing your overall motivation strategy. So when I'm looking to my left, because I just have some notes about my motivation strategy, I think everyone is different, right? So you got to look at what it is, like when do you feel most motivated to take on certain things versus not. So for me, I have this list here, and it's like my motivation strategy. Is the opportunity big? Is there an external/real deadline? Am I motivated? Does it feel right for me? are the stakes high enough to be excited about? And would I be letting someone down that I care about? If I can answer those questions with the opportunities big, the stakes are high, I would be letting someone down I care about, and there isn't a real deadline, these things help me kind of amp my motivation. Now, we're all different, so you got to figure out like when are the times that you've been most motivated, and can you kind of boil that down into a couple of characteristics so that you can then kind of attach to the things that you most feel like you would like to get done. So that's one. But I'd also say that, you know, time management goes hand in hand with productivity. And unless you're clear how much you can get done in a half an hour, how much you can get done in an hour, you can't ever really prioritize, right? So, because if you consistently are wrong about how long things take you, right, you can end up not necessarily doing the most important tasks or like getting done what's most important because you're not clear. So hand in hand with choosing the right things is also recognizing that an estimate of how long it's going to take you and then revisiting that estimate after the fact to determine, like, do you consistently think it's going to take you a lot less than it actually does? Do you consistently think it's going to take you a lot more than it actually does? But understanding like what you can get done in a half hour, what you can get done in an hour, good time management kind of depends on knowing the value of your time. And you can't really know the value of your time unless you know what that you can do in that amount of time. So I'm going to move one of my notes here down in front of me so I don't have to look sideways. But let's see here. Here are some notes about that. Do you know how much you can get done in 30 minutes or an hour? Good time management depends on knowing the value of time and using your energy prudently to achieve more in less time. Task-based lists don't account for time. Task-based lists don't show how long a task will take to complete. It's easy to tackle the simple tasks and leave the important but time-consuming projects undone if you're just doing that on a to-do list basis. So for sure, knowing what you can accomplish realistically in an hour or a half hour is kind of vital. And I would also say that as it applies to success overall, having a good definition of what success means to you is kind of important. And I would venture to guess that most, if not the overwhelming majority, if I were to ask you to define success, you might be hard pressed to kind of give a answer that you really buy into, that you really would say, yes, that is what success is for me. And if you can't define it, you can't measure it, you can't aspire to it, you can't do anything. So, I would, this is outside the scope of just productivity, but it certainly is important. Like, what does success mean to you? Because it's going to be different for every person. Some people want to be a great parent, a great spouse, a great business owner, right? And the more greats that you have in there, the more you have to kind of adjust what you're expecting versus someone who's like, success means success in business, period. That's it. Right now, that's not necessarily a recipe to have a very happy life, but it might be a recipe to have a very successful business. So, if you don't have good definitions of what success means to you and you're comparing yourself to someone whose main focus is being the best parent they can, you're always going to measure up short if you have more than one goal, even if that's one of your goals, right? And if your main thing is success in business, right, but you also have other goals, but you're comparing yourself to where success is only derived by business for someone else, you're constantly going to fall short there too. So success is a very personal thing as well as productivity. And you have to have these kind of definitions kind of laid out for yourself, or you're chasing something fuzzy and you can't necessarily make the best kind of decision in any situation. So there you go. Hello, Ren from North Carolina. Okay, Emmy. Tina, in Germany, we have what we call I'm going to move this because I can't read it that well, so just bear with me for a second. We have what we call Steuerberater. It's a must for every business owner. They keep the books, do accounting, contact finance, amount, and authorities on our behalf, and submit tax reports. So, yeah, so it's like a bookkeeper, I would assume. All right. I jump rope with almost every workout. Underrated exercise. Yeah, and in fact, let's see. I don't know if I. This is a smart rope. And this is what I use. I bought a bunch of them when I started using it, just in case the company ever went out of business. It counts the number of jumps, and I can do intervals on it. And it is a. I try to do it every day. I don't necessarily do it every day, but like it is a great. I travel with it. I did it in Syracuse a couple different days because it's such an easy way to get a workout in. He will kick your ass if you mess up financially. You need to hire someone like that. They are priceless for entrepreneurs. Yeah. So generally, you get a bookkeeper. That's where you start. At some point, you might need more than a bookkeeper. You get an accountant, or you have a bookkeeper and an accountant. At some point, you might have a controller. That is someone who works full time inside your business. That's really in charge of all finances and stuff like that. And then at the highest level is a CFO. And my background is accounting. I was accounting major in college. I got offers from all big 6 firms. I worked for Arthur Andersen for a while and Andersen Consulting. So I know that world pretty well. Hello, Emmy. Good to see you. Shalom, Viviana. On another context, Jerry Jenkins advising on writing, saying, build procrastination time into your diary. Do you use Pomodoros to accommodate your ADD? I use Pomodoros when there's something really important for me to get done, and I'm not just kind of in the groove. I will use Pomodoros to get myself in the groove. I hope that helps, Daryl. Hello to you, Miguel, in Spain. And hey, Daryl, you're close in Pompano Beach. Good to see you. Colombia, Red Lip Marketing. Good to see you. Oops, I skipped a bunch there. There we go. I want my videos to be my blog, my reports, my stories, etc. It's my preferred way of contacting or communicating. On the same page, Davey. Aloha from Hawaii. Very jealous, Martin. I hope Hawaii is experiencing beautiful weather. I feel more and more people are reading less and less, hence preference to video. This shows in comments a lot. Your tips on reading faster has usually helped also. Yeah, well, like I said, right? Like I'm on the same boat. Like if I had a choice of being a better writer or better on video, I would choose video. Yeah, I've heard that a bigger vision is key to helping motivate you. Where is the sweet spot of having a vision big enough to motivate you, but not so big that you still believe that it's impossible? If it's not believable, then it won't motivate you, right? Well, that depends, right? Like, because I would say that, yeah, I guess that all depends on like how believable you feel it needs to be, I'd say. So, like where we're going with Steal Our Winners, we're trying to build something that's never been built before that uses the kind of AI technology that Netflix uses to figure out like what it should be showing you. But instead doing that to help you know what marketing strategy or tactic you should actually be using. That's not necessarily easy. And I don't know that I want to believe that we will revolutionize the way that people approach marketing and approach marketing strategies and tactics and how marketers grow businesses. But what I would say is this, to answer this as truthful as I can and as accurately as I can, Jason. The times I've performed at my best, I believe that I had the potential to change the world and what I was working on. Now, I don't think I've ever changed the world, to be quite frank, right? But I did believe that that was possible in each of the endeavors that really I was passionate about. So when I was in the clothing business, I really thought we were redefining fashion. And we certainly introduced certain things that did have impact, right? Like we were the first store to have DJs. We were the first store to license music. We were the first store to bring Diesel into the United States and a bunch of other brands that are very big these days. But did I impact the world? No. When I started my hypnosis centers, I thought that we had the potential to change the way mental health and the way mental health and success and like self-development was done. And I don't think we did that at all, but like I believed it was possible when we were working on it. And when I no longer believed that was one of several reasons why ultimately I needed to get out of the hypnosis business. When I started the business growth system at Strategic Profits, like our coaching program, I really thought about it changing the way that coaching was ever done. Now, some of the things that I started have kind of just rolled into a bunch of the way coaching is done, just because like I was one of the people early on. But I had a lot of other ideas, like for example, with BGS, right? One of the things that I wanted to do was, or one of the things I thought about doing, let's put it that way, is to have like a 900 number that clients could call 24/7, and it would bill at a couple dollars a minute, and it would make coaching on demand, possible. And you only needed to call, like there would be a base price to go through the modules, and then anytime you needed coaching on it, you could just call, no matter when you're watching it, and get specific coaching for you. We didn't do that, but what I would say is that my passion for coaching went down over time as I didn't do those things. And what I would say is that when I started Steal Our Winners, I was very like excited about it. Then as we were delivering it, I was less so because of the platform and everything else. Then as we developed a new platform, it's now back to like, we have the potential to change the world. And for me, that's what excites me. Now, I don't need to change the world to be excited. I want, though, to have the possibility to change things in a dramatic way based on what I'm doing. And that's enough for me. Now, I think, like I said, Jason, everybody's different. You got to figure out what that is for you. But I don't need to break that up into smaller things to be motivated. I just need to believe it's possible. And I think for other people, it would be totally different criteria, and that's totally okay. You have to figure out what your criteria is. Like what gets you excited to attempt, even if it possibly never gets to the level where you hope it to be. Will we change the way people approach marketing knowledge, marketing tactics, marketing strategies? Maybe, maybe not. But just even having the possibility of it, to me, is exciting. So you got to figure that out, though, for yourself, Jason, whether that is demotivating or motivating. That's an awesome cause, Rich. Cool. Well, I appreciate that. And, I think it's easier to do than most people expect. There's a reason you're doing whatever it is you're doing. And it's not as simple as like that was the opportunity at the moment. I certainly could trace a line how I became who I am today based on just very surface level stuff. But I also can go really deep and also see those connections. And I think like most people haven't taken the time to go really deep to look at like what were the pain points of their childhood? How does what they currently do relate back to that? But I think when I've taken people through a process that did that, like when I did the workshops that were transformational at my office, those 3 different times I did it, most people, most of the time, could find that raw nerve that would then give them tremendous force, power, motivation to propel forward. Thanks for sharing. As you say, more personal, more general. Yes. What is it for? What is what for? I can't read your name perfectly, so let me pull it over here for a second. What is what for, Mikhail? Not sure what the question is. Oh, you're probably asking about Colby. Colby is just a way to either know more about yourself or for companies to understand what gets you stressed. Where's like when you're stressed, when you're trying to solve a problem, what is going to be your default way of doing things, and to recognize that everyone has their kind of approach, and we're going to feel most comfortable and we're in the right spot when we are approaching work. We're allowed to approach work in a way that is most conducive to how we're kind of wired. So it's your cognitive. It's a cognitive test. It's not a cognitive test as far as like how smart you are. It's not emotional. It's cognitive. It's your like MO. It's like when you are like when you come face to face with a problem, what is your default way of solving it? For me, it would be to start quick, use information, and to be highly adaptable, right? But for other people, it's going to be different. So it's not a personality test, it's a cognitive test. Knowing your weakness is a strength. Yes. And then designing so that your weaknesses are irrelevant, whether it's a business partnership or whatever, is the next evolution in really kind of using it to your advantage, which I've spent a lot of time for myself doing as well as for clients. Yeah, Pomodoros are really easy. If I find that I resist routine, but that routine is everything, right? I try not to make things too structured because I'll resist it, but recognize that I thrive in structure, although I resist in structure. So even structure that is self-imposed can be problematic, but I also recognize I do my best. So it's this balance of recognize, which is why like when I travel, it's so hard to get back into my routine because routine is difficult for someone like me. Hope that helps, right? Oh, wow. From Rochester. Very cool. Well, good to see you, Michael. Yep. I was in your neck of the woods just yesterday. I have a certain goal that because of my age, I hope to do it fast as it is not exactly what I would like to do for a long time. Okay. Well, I don't see any problem with that. Having a strategist is, let me see. I'm sorry. I got to keep moving it over here. I'm going to have to figure out a different way to do this. Having a tax strategist is super important in today's world. The CPA takes the details of what is passed and helps you with your taxes, but a tax strategist helps you plan in advance for the actions you're going to take. Totally agree. Just need to be careful who you take advice from. I've seen, as someone who knows accounting very well, I've seen a lot of stuff that has been recommended to people that I think is a recipe for having a problem with the government. So you just got to be careful there. Thanks, Rich. Love the way you explain things, especially mindset. Oh, thank you, Lola. Great point. I'm going to take some time and really think about that. Cool. Being fortunate to seeing a sneak peek at the Infinity Funnel and future SOW will have the similar effect that the Internet Business Manifesto did. No BS. Cool. Beats the shit out of a tip. Rich, thanks. Okay. So let me just pull up different notes here now. Okay, so I told you about tasks and the idea of knowing what you can accomplish in an hour, because if you don't know what you can accomplish in an hour or half hour, I don't know how you can really kind of be at your maximum productivity. In fact, I think it's close to impossible. And let's see here. Next. Obviously, I think most people are aware of open loops, and that like a task that is incomplete on your to-do list will stay on your mind until you finish them or you've done something with them. It's one of the reasons why I think that it's really important for entrepreneurs, especially, to recognize, to not confuse yourself with your business. Like just because your business needs something done doesn't mean that you should be the one doing it. And so there's a to be done list. And then there's a to-do list. To be done is what your company needs. And when your company needs a copywriter, what that doesn't necessitate is you now studying copywriting and now becoming a copywriting like master so that your company, because that would take too long. So just because it's a goal of your business doesn't mean that it needs to be your goal. And so there's a big difference between a to-do list and a get done list. Let's call it a get done list. And the more you recognize that, just because your company needs it doesn't mean you need to be the person providing it, is a moment of freedom for one, But then it kind of forces you to kind of look at other ways of getting stuff done, like whether that's Fiverr, outsourcing, whatever, right? But I think it's critical as an entrepreneur that you distinguish between those two things. And the more things that I can get off my plate that are things that I don't think use my genius, the better. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't tasks that I still have to do, that I really don't feel like I should, but I still have to do them, especially right now, still operating without an assistant. So that puts even more on my plate. But I don't let a lot of those. I'm willing to not be excellent at everything. That I recognize that I'm going to be great at certain things, and those are going to be the things that I naturally gravitate towards. There are going to be things that I'm not that great on, but there might be times where I have to get stuff done in that realm, and I will, but I'm not going to beat myself up about like my level of performance in those things. I'm just going to be happy I got them done. Have you spent the time, and this is very much related to productivity, believe it or not, but like, what does an ideal day look like for you? Like if you had a magic wand and you could just make a ideal day, like a realistic ideal day, what would that look like? And, most people think that if they had no responsibility and they didn't have to work, life would be great. I will tell you, based on my own experience numerous times, as well as many of my friends and colleagues and peers, that gets boring very quickly. That you can have a great time with lots of money and no responsibility for a year or two. I know some people that make a ridiculously more than me, and like 7 figures a week. And I can tell you that based on my experience of them, they were happier when they were in pursuit than they are today. And that, that might be like a extreme, but being clear about what an ideal day is that actually is a productive day. That is a day where work has gotten done, where responsibilities have been met. Being clear of what that looks like is kind of an important kind of focal point to kind of move towards. So, what tasks have to be done today? How do you want to spend your day? What time of day do you do your best work? Do you know when you do your best work? With that scenario in mind, can you then divide the day into sections, right? Like as far as which activities when? I don't always do this, but I find that I am more productive when I do, and that is putting everything actually on the calendar, right? So not only the calls that I have, but when I'm planning on working on certain things, and more these days with Calendly links out there, I kind of need to put stuff on my calendar, because if I don't put it on my calendar, it's in jeopardy of being filled by someone else. And so I've been putting more and more stuff on my calendar. I first heard that from Dan Kennedy like over a decade ago. Didn't do it back then, but certainly have developed that habit. And the idea of anytime you're scheduling anything, just getting into the habit of guesstimating or estimating at first, or guesstimating first, estimating as you kind of get more refined, how long it will take you. Incredibly important, because you need to have the ability to get clear on how long something takes you, because you cannot prioritize until you factor in not only importance, but time. All right, so here are some other notes that I just have together. I've got like a couple different Evernote notes. I would pull them up, but I'm still having a problem getting Evernote up on this other computer for some strange wonky reason. Here are some notes that I took from Super Organizers. It's a Substack that I'm a subscriber to, and they did this series. I haven't actually looked at if they continued it, but where they would do interviews with people who accomplished a lot and like what was their workflows like. So this one was The Magically Unstructured Life of a Crypto Baller. That was the headline of this article. And here are the highlights of what I highlighted that were relevant to me of that article. I rebel against structure if it's too rigid, even if it's self-imposed. I'm on the same page. Certainly can appreciate that. She keeps herself on track with a paper notebook. I tend to do the same, either with a index card or in my actual journal. But tactically writing stuff and having it in front of me, to me, just is more real, easier for it to guide me than putting something on one of my, on the screen, which is easily able to be covered by something else or move screens, etc. Starts fresh with a new to-do list every day. I do the same. If something doesn't get done, it's about manually rewriting it on the list for the next day if it's that important. So I'm not just carrying a ton of stuff forward. If something gets moved every day, it's a signal that maybe it needs to go to someone else, or it doesn't matter, or it's not something I plan on working on. This person schedules anti-procrastination slots with friends whenever I have to do something that I know I'm going to be putting off. So that's exactly like what I was saying, like having Lydia come down here and help me with my accounting, just because I'm not going to get it done on my own. And knowing that, like, I can figure out a way, outthink myself ahead of time of making sure to set it up in a way where it will actually get done. One thing a day to focus on, right? I don't just focus on one thing a day, but one thing that I do is one thing that I do is I do and I wouldn't say I do it every day, but I do it more days than I don't, and I really should do it every day, is to really be clear each day. What is the most important thing for me today? So that when I put my head on the pillow at night, when the day is done, that I have a way of evaluating whether today was well lived. And if I'm clear about what the most important thing is for me today, or if something else pops up during the day that is objectively for me more important, and handling that is an easy way for me when I put my head down on the pillow to be satisfied, right? To know that it was a day well lived. And that is incredibly important. So it's like, yeah, there might be 20 things to get done today, but if that 20, if this shit hit the fan and I wasn't able to address them, what's the one thing that this day should be about? Whether I attack those 20 or not, what's the one thing that if I got done today would make today a day well lived? Is an important question I ask myself. It's a way I kind of stay on track. It's a way to kind of make sure that at the end of the day, I don't beat myself up, because like I said, I can look at my journal and I can see that there were many years of my life where all I did was beat myself up, and I don't need to be keeping a journal for that. I think it's demotivating. So nowadays I try to avoid that. And some of the ways I do that is thinking at the beginning of the day, what makes today a well-lived day, so that I can make sure that I do that, so that at the end of the day, I feel satisfied. I actively try not to keep my calendar super booked, because I don't know what's going to be important too far out. On the same page there, right? My calendar gets pretty booked, but I don't want it far booked, because priorities change, and I want to make sure that I can be nimble and flexible. Yeah. So the other thing I would say that just it's not in those notes, but is something I've shared numerous times and is very much related to productivity for me, is the more activities I can combine, the more likely it is that those activities get done. So it's a lot easier for me to work out on the elliptical, because that's where I also do my reading. So if there's times I want to read, I get on the elliptical. When I want to work out, I'm doing reading, right? I've combined meditation with inversion. So I hang upside down, and that's when I do my meditating. So anytime I'm doing my inversion, I'm meditating. Anytime I feel like meditating, I'm doing inversion. And the more things that I can combine that way, the more likely it is for me to be doing those tasks. So where are the overlaps, and how can you combine activities so that it actually is more likely to be done? It's much more likely for me to read because of that connection with the elliptical. And I didn't start meditating on a regular basis, like every day, until I actually combined it with inversion. So I'm constantly looking for ways to get more leverage from the things, from the tasks that I'm already doing, and figuring out ways to inject more into those things without it becoming burdensome, right? Because if it becomes over burdensome, then I won't do it at all. And that doesn't work either. But I find that for me, having core activities that can have two outcomes really makes a big difference for me. And so the more activities that I can do that way, uh, the better off I am. And looking for stuff like that, or looking at the tasks that I do frequently and figuring out how I can make them serve two masters instead of one, is highly productive thinking time for me. And when I figure out one, very valuable to me as well. Um, all right. Let's see. I'm just going to other notes and I want to see what you guys have to say. So let's see here. Uh, on the difference between to do or to be done lists, you versus your business, how do you deal with the ego emotional aspects of trying to solve prior emotional social ego challenges by doing the stuff that you should probably just let go? Um, I wish you could give me an example there, Gogo. I'm not sure what specifically you're talking about there. Um, I would say that I don't really have that issue. And the thing that I would say that is closest to that, but I don't think it's that close, um, is being more a victim of my past successes. So, in other words, like not being fooled that, like, for example, a report is the best way to solve every marketing problem just because that's the way I solved a bunch in the past. In other words, not being too tied to what brought me success in the past, not totally discounting it either, and recognizing that if they worked for me in the past, there might be a reason. And so it should carry forward. But times change. And just because like that's been my default strategy in the past doesn't mean it should be my default strategy going forward. That would be the only time that I think I fall victim to anything of what you're talking about there. And it's still challenging, right? Because like a, just to take a stupid example, and I'm just making this up, but like let's say that like I have a choice between writing a report or doing a webinar, and maybe a webinar is the best way to do it, or maybe a live stream. But like my experience tells me that I'm best at writing reports. Like now it's kind of for where the world is, maybe live streaming is best, right? For what will convert best, a webinar does best. For what will be easiest for me to do an impeccable job at would be a report. So those are the kinds of things that potentially, like as far as using what's worked in the past, even though it's a different time, relying on that too much in the present. That would be the only thing that I'd say, like at times I got to be careful of, but I'm not sure if that's what you're asking, Gogo, or if you're asking something different. Timestamp. Cool. I guess that's John's Colby score, 7382. So very similar because I'm 6'3", 7'4". Interesting. Daryl, I learned that delegating well means being able to do and explain the task and and monitor performance. Let me just move it over here because it looks like delegating. Okay, and then monitor performance. Delegating without understanding and purely because you don't like it or no, it is dumping. Yeah, well, I call that abdicating, right? There's a big difference between delegating and abdicating responsibility. Like here, you fix it. So abdication doesn't work. It's what a lot of entrepreneurs like to do, but it doesn't work. And yeah, delegating is letting the person who is now responsible. It's making someone else responsible for the outcome, being willing to explain why that outcome is important, how you might approach it if you were doing it, but also letting them have the freedom to determine what would be best when they're for them to complete to get it done being clear about what the outcome is, why that outcome is important to the company, etc. So yes, a lot of people abdicate, and that's a recipe for a disaster. There are elements of delegation that need to be clear, and it's not just about how to do the task. It's also about like, how does this task fit into the greater of the business, and why therefore this task is even being done. One of my big criticisms when I was working with a couple different divisions of Agora was like, there was like, when we did a campaign at Strategic Profits, like we would have a visual representation of the entire campaign and why each piece was in there and what the overarching story of this launch or campaign was. And so everyone would be on the same page as to what we were trying to achieve, so that they could reflect on what they were responsible for and potentially make what they were responsible for even better at serving the bigger purpose and the bigger like story arc and all that. That does, like, when I went to Agora, like everyone just had their little role and they weren't aware of like the bigger arc of the campaign. So like a designer is designing something, not necessarily knowing the story of the whole campaign, but just like what they were told as far as design of this thing. And I think that that was a recipe to not get the best out of every person, and it was also a recipe to not have great teamwork, because it's not like everybody's on the same page. I think that's a big mistake. And I think that, so when delegating, and the reason I bring that up is like, it's not only about the task, it's about how that task and that outcome relates to the bigger objectives, right, that the company is trying to pursue. Oh, let's see, I skipped too many. I'm always curious when people meditate, meaning time of day. I'm still working on this. I generally meditate in the morning. If I'm pressed for time, I might bypass that and then I'll meditate at night. I like to, the app that works the best for me is Waking Up by Sam Harris. I certainly have all of the meditations from Headspace. I just like Sam's stuff because I find him to be highly intelligent, and the way he explains it, not just meditating, but like the benefits and how to carry that forward throughout your day, I find very valuable. Rich, what are the real effects of inversion you actually feel in your life? I don't know. I like inversion because my doctor, who I have tremendous respect for, does it daily. I also just kind of, it makes sense to me to kind of stretch out my spine a little bit because gravity's working against it pretty much on a daily basis. But I have zero back problems, zero. And I'd like to keep it that way. And so to me, it's just another way of making sure that my discs don't get too compressed, that I don't shrink too much as I age. But am I someone who swears by it? Not at all, because I really don't have, I think it's something good for people who have certain issues with their back. For me, I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm doing it to prevent issues with my back. And, jumping rope, I'm jumping up and down. There's compression there, right? So it seems like just a wise idea to kind of stretch myself out. I'd also say, and this might be relevant for some of you, might not, but I've also over the years, I've grown to really kind of pay attention to my body more and more. I've, way before I ever was diagnosed with ADD. I wasn't diagnosed with ADD until I was in my 30s. But way before that, I had always self-medicated, you could say, with stimulants, right? Like with coffee, with nicotine, right? Like, so I naturally gravitated to things that were like self-medicating, right? And I feel like my body, I think I pay attention to my body more than most people do, or at least the people I'm around. So if I'm not feeling well, I don't ignore that. Like I'm very quick to kind of think, okay, I need to get a good night's sleep tonight. I need to adjust things, right? Because my body's trying to tell me something. And so I would say that like inversion felt like something I should try. And so I did, and I liked it. I don't have any specific reason for doing it. I don't have any problems that I'm trying to handle, but I like the idea of doing it. And I trust my body enough to let me know, like, if I'm enjoying it, it's probably something that I should continue to do. And if it's not, then I won't. But I just have a lot of everybody's body responds differently to different things. And being aware of how your body responds and what it's trying to tell you, I think is really valuable. Thanks. I'm processing way too much. I'm for my too much list. Off to work. Cool. I got it, Curtis. Cool. I'm it. What's your favorite cigar to smoke? Padron 1964 anniversary. Uh, I'm up at 5:30 and finish shower, breakfast, and household stuff till 8 a.m. Then begin my day. Yeah, I find that I'm trying the for me, ideally, I wake up at 6 a.m. I wake up 6 a.m. every day. Am I doing that right now? No. I'd like to get back to that. With all the travel and stuff, it's caused challenges falling asleep. But I know that if I just push through it, get up at 6 every day, I will eventually fall asleep easier in the evening. And I have always found that forcing myself to wake up at that time every day eventually gets everything else to fall in line. Ah, yeah. I've often thought about meditating midday, but it's like anything I put in the middle of my day is very is at the mercy of everything else I'm doing during the day, and that oftentimes makes it not happen. Many thanks for your frankness and engagement. I have another webinar starting now. Well, go enjoy your webinar, my man. If you're a copy coach or a marketing coach, would it be out of integrity to hire someone to do your own copy or your own marketing? I don't think so at all. Look, like Jay Abraham, who's, you know, very good at writing copy himself and can actually dictate it. He used to hire copywriters all the time to just write copy, like to sell something of his that either exists or doesn't. He would pay them and then he would keep that. And then he would use like their ideas and sometimes as like a fodder to write his own stuff. Yeah, I don't think, look, at some point, you have to decide what are your highest value activities and then focus in on those things. There are many A-level copywriters who now coach who don't really want to write copy anymore, but they spent 25 years being one of the best in the world at writing it. And you'd be lucky to get their advice, whether they currently want to write copy or not. And I can tell you, it's pretty common for top copy. It's not the rule, but it's pretty common for a top copywriter at some point in their career to decide they don't want to write copy anymore and they just want to copy. Like, I mean, it's actually a progression in Agora, like eventually you become a copy chief, which doesn't give you a lot of time to write your own copy, but you're working with a bunch of copywriters who you're getting an override on their royalties, can make a lot more money because it's spread out over many people. But now you're giving some of your copy cubs your best ideas and then coaching them through the process. So I don't think it's a problem at all. Monte Cristo number 2. Oh yeah, Monte Cristo number 2. That used to be my favorite. Hard to get these days. I generally, but yeah, if I'm overseas, I would generally buy a Monte Cristo number 2 torpedo. So it's funny, Davey, that you like that one because yeah, I love that one. It's a toss-up between that, a Monte Cristo number 2, which is a torpedo, or a Padron 1964 anniversary natural. Rich, did you figure out the source of the trauma you are self-medicating for? I am not prying into your actual trauma. It's personal. I'm curious if you figured out what the trauma is. What was your process to get to that realization? I've just done a lot of work. So I've done a lot of work. I think, yeah, I mean, look, there were traumatic events that happened in my life. I think there's traumatic events that have happened in most people's lives. I've tried to my best of my ability, work through that. I don't think I walk around full of rage anymore. So that's a good thing. I do think that I am somewhat disassociated from my body, which I think there's a price to pay for that, but there's also some benefits for it. So I'm less inclined to kind of probe deeper on that. But yeah, I went to therapy for years. I've kept a journal for 30 years. I've definitely done a lot of work on myself. I'm at a point though where it's now more about me not necessarily getting to answers about my past as it is about just what prevents me from enjoying each day as much as humanly possible and working on that. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Amit, but it does to me. Hopefully it does to you. Russell Brunson, wait, I can't read. I was just talking to Russell. Russell and I spent an hour talking this morning, actually. Russell Brunson says marketing is like sex. You can't delegate it. Yeah, well, that's because Russell's a marketer and so am I. So we obviously think it's the most important thing in the world. There were people who would tell you otherwise, and, you know, to each their own. Thanks, Rich. My pleasure. All right. So let's see. Let me go over a few other things real quick. But I would say that, look, you know, there's a million like Medium articles about like productivity hacks, and some are good, some are not. But I would say that if you're not clear about what success is, if you're not clear about like what the most important thing outcome that you're working on each day is, and if you're not clear on what you can actually accomplish in a half hour, an hour, then everything else is kind of suspect. And that those tactics might be helpful to you, they might not. I would say that getting clarity on those things, really important. Putting things on the calendar may or may not help you. It depends on, you know, what level of structure you thrive under. Definitely for me, being to turn more things into adrenaline type events. That's what a Pomodoro does for me. That's what working towards a timer does for me. That's what a real deadline does for me. All of those things are like increasing the adrenaline of the activity. And I find for me that makes it a lot easier to actually dive in, get it done. Maybe that does for you, or maybe that makes you really anxious. I don't know, right? So you got to kind of experiment for yourself, right? But definitely racing towards adrenaline for me is very powerful. Working side by side, like working around people, also very beneficial for me. Don't know if it would be for you or not, but certainly I get more work done when there are witnesses, right? Than when there are no witnesses. It's one of the reasons why, like when I'm at a hotel and I have the choice of working in my hotel room alone, if I'm at a hotel alone, or working in the lobby, I will choose the lobby more often than not because I get more work done when there's a buzz of activity around me than I do just sitting in a room all by myself. It's too easy to be distracted. Let's see. Outthinking myself, right? Understanding that I have certain proclivities, and those proclivities can be outthought, right? So recognizing that when push comes to shove, I'll probably take the path of least resistance. I'll take what's easiest. So, you know, it's like whenever I have conversations about this, people tell me like there are different strategies. Like when I was talking about this, about making it easier for your future self to follow through, because the to follow through will be the path of least resistance. So whenever I talk about this, people will tell me their strategies. Like Ivaldo, who's one of the top copywriters at Agora, like he, you know, where his home office is like on the second floor. He's moved since, so I don't know what's now, but like he would leave his phone on the first floor. This way he would not be tempted to use his phone while he's writing, right? Just those kinds of little things matter. And so thinking about like where you have gone astray or gone awry in the past and trying to outthink yourself is a powerful approach. And I've done that. I do that for myself constantly, and I have to kind of recognize that I want that my future self is no better than my current self. And therefore, if I can make it so that the default easiest thing to do is actually to get the work done that I need to get done, the likelihood is that it will be much higher, right? You know, can you work where there's no Wi-Fi? Can you turn off the Wi-Fi on your computer? Can you set up rules, right? Like you're not going to shower until you've gotten your writing done, right? Like if writing is a challenge for you. Trying to reduce and eliminate any friction points that don't need to be there in your day-to-day life, right? Not being willing to settle. Like if you have a door that like is a pain in the ass to open every day, not being willing to just make that like part of the routine, but trying to eliminate those friction points so that life can kind of build the momentum in and of itself. I think momentum is incredibly important. I think that, like, one of the reasons why Steal Our Winners really excites me is that giving people marketing strategies earlier in their evolution have the ability to provide people with positive momentum where things start to really work in their business. It's no difference personally in your own life. Like, when you start getting stuff done at a level that you haven't before, it does provide a positive momentum. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to kind of outthink yourself, set yourself up for not being distracted by the things that have distracted you in the past by engineering the right environment for you to work in, right? So I do love Brain FM. I love the tool like Quick Reader and Voice Stream, and I use a Fisher Wallace sometimes, right? That's electromagnetic stimulation for the brain, which works with the pineal gland, I think. But don't quote me on that. I'm just looking at other stuff. Right, using templated questions, like, that's something. So the very first report that I ever wrote for Founders Club, and then we'll call it a wrap, right? Like, but to look at your previous successes and see if you can leverage them. So the very first report I wrote for Founders Club, which is available in, I think, the Strategic Profits Facebook group for free. It's called Your Business Blueprint, not to be confused with another report I have, which is My Business Blueprint, which is everything that we did in our first year of business to go from 0 to 7.4 million. But Your Business Blueprint is where I walk you through, like, how to go from an idea to ultimately a business that runs without you. And I was very proud of that report after I wrote it. And so I actually hired a writer that I really had respect for to go through that report and turn it back into an outline of just questions. Like, what did I answer in each paragraph or section, so that I could then use those questions to stimulate ideas for me to write other reports, since I liked how it came out. So even though that first report that I wrote, I didn't use questions or an outline, because the end result was something I was very happy with. It was like, okay, how can I use this now to make other times easier, right? So templated questions, right, works well for me. But really kind of dissecting, when anything works for me, how can I leverage that to make other things easier going forward, is really valuable. So I've done the same thing with all my free reports, and really kind of making sure that I extract the benefit for myself going forward as much as possible. Let's just see. I mean, I've shared a bunch of nootropics that I do and biohacking that I do: nicotine, caffeine, L-theanine, any of the acetams, racetam, piracetam, phenylpiracetam, etc., subglutamine, etc. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I've left out. Let's see if there's any final questions, and then if not, we'll call it a day. I have no problem ending a little early. I, in fact, like it. My first day back, since last week we didn't do any live streams. Although I really hope that you guys got to watch that first video, the one from Tuesday, because that one was really good. Really good interview that Todd Brown did with me, because Todd knows me better than probably anyone else out there. Or Alan K. Holy crap. Blast from there. I work best when there are consequences. That's why I make bets with people. For example, if I don't complete X by X, I will donate $1,000 to the Clinton Foundation. Alan Kay is someone who I used to work with years and years and years ago. He's someone who I have a lot of respect for. And, there are certain people that come into my life, my business life, that it's very clear that they're going to end up somewhere significant, that they're on a path. And, whether that's like the manager of my store that eventually became the president of retailing for Diesel, or, someone like Todd Brown, or someone like Justin Brook, or, et cetera. Alan is one of those people that it was very clear from day one he would eventually move on to bigger and better things. So, Alan, just happy that you're here and excited that you're here. Going to a 2-hour workday rather than trying to return to the 40-hour work week. Thanks for the thought. Yeah, and then just it's about making those 2 hours as productive as humanly possible and not being willing to add more time until you do that. Yeah, so Davey, if that's what you've recognized about yourself, it's like, how do you leverage that to get the most out of yourself, right? Hey, Renan, good to see you here from Brazil, and thank you for sharing, my friend. Do you think it's easier to sell done for you or one-on-one consultancy? I'm getting ready to launch my online business. Done for you is always the easiest because people are inherently lazy. Although then you also have to counter that with most people don't know what they're doing, but still feel like they can tell you how to get them the result, which is always interesting. Supplement list would be cool to see. Yeah, one of these days I'll put that together, but I'll do a live stream on it, so I'm not leaving you there to just destroy your own health. I thought Daniel Levis's would be in this month's deal. Our winners didn't see it. Um, no, it's in next month. It'll be at the end of October that when we release. So that was last month. You know, we release at the end of the month. Go. Did you say that was last Tuesday? The interview with Todd Brown? Yeah, the interview with Todd Brown. Todd interviewed me, and it ended up in an Andre Chaperone product, and it was about like really leverage belief creation and leveraging that in your marketing process. For me, when I have my shit together, it's so much easier to be productive versus when I'm shaken, can't concentrate. Of course, yes. The interview with Todd Brown is great. Thanks for letting us have access. Yeah, my pleasure. I'm very proud of it because I thought that Todd asked me questions that only Todd could ask me based on how much he knows about my story. Do you do any Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube advertising for your business? It seems to be getting more expensive with less results. YouTube is the place that I would recommend these days. Facebook is still experiencing problems from what happened with Apple, and they're not there yet. We are not really spending much on advertising right now. We will be again in the future, but right now we're really focused in on a few key activities for the business in addition to our new platform, which we really feel will be game changer. It's one of those things that like to reference back to what I was talking about at the beginning of this live stream, that I really feel like it has the potential or possibility of impacting the world in a major way, and certainly marketing. And so that's what juices me right now. In fact, I'm Alan Kay. If you're still on, I want to show you the new platform at some point. I think you'd be excited about it too, and I would love to hear your ideas on it. But that is how that's what we're doing. But certainly, if you're trying to make Facebook work and you haven't tried YouTube, you certainly should try YouTube. It's a lot easier these days to make work than Facebook. I'm sure Facebook will eventually get all the data they need and their systems will be better. But, it might take some time. And, who knows what's going to happen with these different platforms. I do think they're inherently evil based on how they operate. It's why I did the Council to Save Internet Business. It's why I have those T-shirts that say "Disobey Big Tech," and that was before COVID even came out. So I made a lot of predictions during that live stream that was in February of 2020 of what would occur, and I kind of have nailed a lot of those. You could go back and watch, and you'll see how many of them I nailed. So anyway, that's about it, guys. So on Thursday, I think is an Ask Me Anything, and that's primarily because I got to do a webinar before then. That is a new webinar, so I got a bunch of work on my hands. And so I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here, for participating, for those who shared. I really appreciate it. Helping us get the message out to more people. It just makes this time that I spend here in front of this camera more valuable to me, more valuable to the company. And it means a lot to me when you're willing to introduce me to your friends and peers. I don't ever take that for granted. And I try to live my life, my professional life, in a way where you will never regret that. I realize also that you have plenty of ways. That you have plenty of ways of how to spend your time. And by deciding to be here, I just want to thank you for that and what it says about you and what it says about this space that we try to create. So just thanks. Thanks for being here. Thanks for participating. Thanks for listening. Thanks for, being willing to engage in the conversation if you did, and sharing if you did, and emoting if you did, and subscribing if you did. So with all that, I look forward to seeing those of you who care to join me on Thursday to ask me anything. I'll also have some stuff. I'll have more stuff to share. I definitely want to spend more time talking about momentum, talking about how marketing strategies either are providing that for you or they're not. But I'll also be there to answer any and all questions that you have. So until then, to Higher Profits Beyond, Rich Sheffrin, over and out.